Much like his predecessors at the quarterback position, Caleb Williams finds a way to will Oklahoma to a victory with a defense that was abysmal and struggled all day long. Welcome into Boomer Breakdown. My name is Jason Ray, taking you through the next hour as we talk about everything Oklahoma related. Oklahoma defeats Kansas 35-23 in a very lackluster, very flat performance in which Caleb Williams made tons of plays down the stretch that really won the game for Oklahoma despite a very sluggish defensive performance overall, which has begun to be the trend towards the middle part of the season for Oklahoma. So I think overall it was expected. I think for Oklahoma to be flat in this game, coming off of two fairly emotional games. Obviously, the Texas game is always emotional. TCU game was emotional just for the fact that um, just for the fact that all the hype surrounding the possibility of Caleb Williams making his first start, and then being back at home after the excitement of the Texas game, and then to come to this game. They even mentioned on the broadcast 11 a.m. kickoff at Kansas. No one seemed to really. I mean, you could tell that the team really didn't care, which was very much expected. Tons of people out from an injury perspective on both sides of the ball. So the flatness was expected. However, you would expect Oklahoma to rebound much quicker than they did, and played just honestly, guys, one of the worst halves of football Oklahoma's played in 20 plus years. I'm trying to remember an equally as bad half as that Oklahoma has played over the last 15 to 20 years, down 10 to nothing at halftime. Not completely blaming the offense on in the first half. They really just didn't get a lot of opportunities. It started early on, the very first drive of the game for Kansas went right down the field, took, right at about 10 minutes off the clock, a little less, closer to 9 minutes, but still, that's the MO of these teams that play Oklahoma. And you're going to see it time and time again over the next 5 games in the regular season. Then that, sorry, 4 games with trying to remember, no, 4 games, 8-0 right now, 4 games the rest of the regular season. That's the MO that you're going to see these teams do whatever they can to keep Oklahoma's offense off the field. I think the one calling card that you've seen from this defense, to a certain extent early on, is they were able to stop the run. Well, they've not stopped the run at all. Over the last couple of games, Kansas gashed them. I don't know I can look at the final stats here, but close to 200 yards rushing for the game, I think, for Kansas. So that's not working. And so I think you credit Caleb Williams. I think I give him the biggest consideration for Oklahoma winning this game. When you look at the plays, obviously in the first half, he forced that one ball down the field, which, you live and die with some of those to a certain extent to take some of those chances. But I think that shows, what you're going to see is you're going to see a couple of mistakes, but you're going to see a few great plays that he makes. The 40-yard touchdown run was a great play, and then obviously one of the best plays I've ever seen. Particularly a true freshman to make, was to take the ball from Kennedy Brooks just to get that fourth down conversion. Because who knows if Oklahoma doesn't convert that, we may be talking about one of the most embarrassing losses in Oklahoma Sooner football history. Just because I don't know if there is a lot of confidence in Oklahoma's ability to stop Kansas at that point. Specifically, that last drive, they went up and down the field extremely, extremely quickly. So that was kind of really just frustrating to see how the defense had played a lot better in the second half, at least. So 166 yards on the ground for Kansas. So not good. Definitely not good at all. So a lot of work to do on defense. The one thing that the slimmest of credits that you'll give to the defense is I know they've got a ton of people out. Willie Washington, DJ Graham, DTY, Jalen Redmond, lots of guys that are still out. that are completely still out. Hopefully, they'll be back. I mean, for Texas Tech, or definitely because Oklahoma has a bye week between Texas Tech and Baylor. They definitely will need them from Baylor. Um, so I think Baylor brings a different challenge, obviously, but still, the defense has to get better. They have not played well at all in the last 3 games against Texas. TCU, and then today against Kansas as well. A better team would have certainly would have beat Oklahoma. So and I see some comments here, and I'm gonna say this. Just I'm not blaming Grinch at all. Miss me with the fire Grinch and get rid of him type of comments, because that's not it. Players got to go perform. These kids have been hyped as potentially on the defensive side of the ball, on the defensive line, one of the best defensive lines in the country, and they're getting no pressure whatsoever. We can't cover anybody in the back end. So players got to go make the plays. I think at the end of the day, it's so easy. I think us as armchair quarterbacks and watching the game, it's much more easy to just sit here and blame the coach. But coming from someone who is a coach and coming from someone who's been around, it's a bit of a cop out in my opinion. I mean, if the players aren't good, you're not getting good players there, and it's up to the coaches to motivate those players and get them ready. I get that part of it, but um, I don't think it's in a situation where you blame the coaches for the play on the field. Now, the one thing that I will say is the speed D mentality, in terms of being a little bit lighter on the defensive line, and using your speed to your benefit. I mean, maybe that's something that Oklahoma needs to revisit, just in terms of being a little bit too light. Gabe Eicher talked about it a little bit on their podcast earlier this week, that he just feels like the Oklahoma's too light on the defensive line, and I think that's a fair point, and I agree with that completely. They need to get some, because even no matter how quick you are, light versus heavy's going to win almost every time. So I think that's a problem, and I just the thing that I think about with Grinch is, the defense consistently got better year one and then year two, and he didn't just all of a sudden stop learning how to coach in year three. For whatever reason, the players just, I mean, and some of it's injuries, but that's a bit of an excuse as well. So yeah, I know there's going to be a lot of comments about that, but I'm not of the proponent that, hey, they need to get rid of him, or whatever. I think one of the things that we've seen out of this Oklahoma team year in and year out over the last 5 years, 10 years, they do a really good job at playing down to their competition. We've gone over the fact, time and time again, where Oklahoma does not have the killer instinct that they really need to go and really win these games. Kansas aside, but go and consistently win these games in the dominating fashion. They don't have that same killer instinct. I had mentioned very early on here after the Tulane game, that this team has some program problems, just in terms of the way they compete. I think more than anything, um, and it wasn't really rumors; it was actually proven to be a fact that um, during the Tulane game, when Oklahoma was up, by I think 20, 22 points at that time, they defensive players started checking themselves out of the game, taking off their equipment and things like that. So I mean, I think number one, either players thinking they can do that, or two, coaches giving them a situation where they feel like that they're able to do that. And I think that's just been a consistent theme. Excuse me, a consistent theme with this team over and over again, throughout the last 4 or 5 years, particularly under Riley, but it was there under Stoops as well. But I think it's been kind of more accentuated under Riley as well. So I think the good thing that you can say is you're 8-0. I think it's the first time since 2004 that Oklahoma has started 8-0. You get to host Tech, which lost was up 24-10, ended up losing 25-24 to Kansas State at home today. So they're a bit up and down, but so Oklahoma has an opportunity, obviously, to go 9-0 into the bye week, and then hopefully you get some players back. Hopefully you get some confidence into the toughest stretch run of the season, um, with going to Baylor, hosting Iowa State, and then going to Oklahoma State to end the season. So, Oklahoma is one of those teams right now that there's every game but two, right? So and even the TCU game was fairly close. The only real blowout was the the 77-0 game against Western Carolina. But then you've got the TCU game, which I wouldn't necessarily consider that a blowout. Oklahoma's up 14, and they score a touchdown late in the game to make it look a little bit like a bigger advantage. But Oklahoma's got to figure some things out. Definitely, I think early on in the season there was a bit of a struggle on both sides of the ball. I think Oklahoma um, has has solved, I think, a lot of their issues um, on the offensive side of the ball. They're playing much better. Third straight game with over 200 yards rushing, 34 carries for 220 yards. Offense played really well in the second half. I think it's a testament to just more opportunities that they got. Obviously, 35 points and a half is very impressive, no matter who you're playing. So I think would the defense have given the offense more opportunities in the first half, I think you would have seen a team that is scored a lot more, maybe than they should have, or that they could have, right, with just those 35 points on the board. But yeah, no, I think that the offense was strong, um, and offense played really well, and I think that's kind of the least of your concerns. I mean, you're gonna see a play here and there where Caleb Williams, makes a freshman mistake from time to time, but I think you're gonna take a few of those small mistakes with the big plays. Just to be honest with you, I'm not saying, um, I'm not saying the other players didn't contribute on the offensive side of the ball, but I think Caleb Williams won this game for Oklahoma. Number one, the 40-yard touchdown run. He was very efficient in the passing game, 15 out of 20, 178 yards. Not great numbers in terms of yardage, but he did account for three touchdowns, and he made the plays down the stretch that you need to play. Made a lot of smart, heady plays that you would expect. The starting quarterback at the University of Oklahoma to make. So I think obviously he's solidified his starting position for Oklahoma. He's the quarterback for this year and the next 2 years. Would barring something crazy. And I think one thing that's interesting, and I know a lot of people don't like to necessarily talk about this because I know we all want national championships and playoff wins over a Heisman, but I think the Heisman conversation will be interesting. Caleb had a clear Heisman moment today. Not the greatest numbers, but he had a clear Heisman moment today with actually maybe even two. When you look at that 40-yard touchdown run, and then when you also look at what he was able to do, and kind of taking that ball from Kennedy Brooks reminded me a lot of the Ed Reed play in 2001 for for Miami. Against Boston College, and he stole the ball from his teammate, and took the interception back for a touchdown. So bear with me, my voice is a little shaky. We had our first basketball game last night, but we yeah, I think you see that intangible, you see that leadership. I think one of the things that he did that was really helpful. He went in, got in the defense and tried to pump them up, and so you see that it factor, you see that leadership factor that he has. So all in all, I mean, I mean, the few positives that you can say about this game is number one, Oklahoma won. They're 8-0 for the first time since 2004. Number two, Caleb Williams continues to play well. And then, other than that, it's just a win for Oklahoma to get where they need to get, which is to win first and foremost, to win the Big 12 championship, and then secondarily to put themselves in a position to potentially get a playoff berth and play for a national championship. The defense has just got to get a lot better. I think, I mean, the way that the defense is playing right now, Oklahoma's not going to be able to play to play winning football in November, which they've done very, very consistently over the last few years. They've dominated November. It's been a while since they've lost a game in November, so they continue to do that. Continue to get better, get some guys back on defense. Should be very helpful for the Sooners. And I think the biggest thing, defensively, that we continue to see over and over and over and over and over again is missed tackles. Every week, it's an epidemic, and so, when you get to this point in the season, like, kind of, you are who you are type of situation, right? I mean, you can always improve tackling, but you can't get a ton better. Like, this is the kind of team that you are, from that perspective. So they've just got to keep working it, try to figure out, get some of these kids back, get back in. Um, so you guys, let me know whether your violent reactions, your predictions, can do you think Oklahoma can turn it around? It's hard to say turn it around when you're 8-0 and are going to be ranked in the top five. Wouldn't be completely surprised to see Alabama and or Ohio State possibly jump Oklahoma, depending on how they play tonight. Alabama hosts Tennessee. Ohio State goes to Indiana 6:30 p.m. tonight. So I think that will be interesting. I mean, you're still in the top five no matter what, but could see a scenario where Oklahoma drops. Me and Mark Rogers talked about this. This team each and every week makes me think of the Florida State team, and I can't remember the year, but they had just won the national championship the year before, and then they came in as one of the top teams in the country that year, and they just found ways to win. They were very never extremely impressive throughout the year. They just found ways to win close games over and over and over again, and that's what Oklahoma's doing right now. So I mean, you're playing with fire if you continue to do that, but I think it's a situation where they need to be able to continue to get better, as well, because Baylor's really good, Iowa State's really good, Oklahoma State's really good. Three best teams in the Big 12 right now that you could make an argument, for those three. Iowa State, if they win today, they get back. They can kind of get back into that, um, into contention in terms of one of the best teams in the Big 12. But right now, I think it's definitely those 4 or 5 in the conversation for sure. All right, so give me your comments. What do you think? Can Oklahoma win the Big 12 championship game? Can they get to the playoffs if they were to play a team like a Cincinnati? How do you feel about Oklahoma being able to win that game? Um, what do you think about Caleb Williams? Possibly inserting himself into the Heisman Trophy conversation, especially with a season where you don't have a whole lot of front runners. To be honest, I mean, you have Bryce Young and you have Matt Corral as as your top two guys. One way or the other. Um, but do you have you have Bijan Robinson, who's lost a couple of games, has a couple of tough games left at Baylor, at Iowa State. You have you have, I'm trying to remember all the guys. Desmond Ritter didn't really have a great game today against Navy. Cincinnati was just an okay win. against Navy, and then you have Kenneth Walker III for Michigan State, who's having a good year. But then he's got kind of a murderous row schedule with Penn State, with Michigan, and then Ohio State here to end the game. So he has an opportunity to make a, um, to make a mark, definitely, and get himself into that conversation sooner than later. Yeah, I think you're playing with fire, King Leash. If you think like that, I mean, I think at the end of the day, Robert Griffin III made the comment. By the way, I thought he was going to be pretty good to start the season overall, but he's pretty. It's hard to listen to him as a color commentary, but anyways, you are playing the fire. You've got to get much better. And yes, the end of the day, you just win, but you are playing dangerously and playing with fire if you just barely seem to find ways to win these games by not a big margin. So we'll see if Oklahoma is able to do anything um, to do anything to get better. Brilliant play, yeah. One of the smartest, best plays I've ever seen. Like I said, we may be talking about Oklahoma losing this football game, um, if not for him. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, tackling has, and it's not been as big of an issue over the last few years, but definitely has been a lingering, continuous issue this year for this team. I mean, I'm not sure why that is. I mean, I know some defenses are just better tackling defenses than not, and you hate to, and not that I'm using this as an excuse, so don't feel like that's the reason that I'm saying this, but you you have a you have a team that's missing so many starters on defense. It's tough, especially in the back end. To play consistently. I think the one thing that just continues to be a really, really big disappointment is the defensive line is just they're just not playing great football right now. It's the second week in a row that they've really, really struggled to get any kind of pressure on the quarterback. They're not stopping the run. So I think tackling and just the lack of play on the defensive line is the biggest concern from my perspective right now. Let's see. Yeah, and I think the one thing that Oklahoma's struggling with is just where the bye week came from them, because they've played consecutive games, all season. Oklahoma's going to play 9 straight weeks. That's a lot. So the schedule makers didn't do Oklahoma any favor. So they'll have 9 weeks, and then they'll finally get their bye week in 2 weeks from now after Texas Tech. But still, you've got a team here that is hurting, and they need to get healthy in a hurry. Let's see. Bobby says too many arm tackles. I completely agree with that. Just not wrapping people up has been a consistent theme as well. Um, let's see. Definitely agree, Cliff. If any of you guys have watched Baylor, incredibly improved team this year. What you would expect to see out of the Dave Aranda coach team is really, really solid defensive play. Offensively, from Jerry Bohannon, they get the quarterback very efficient at the quarterback position. I think he just last week may have thrown his first interception of the year for Baylor. But I think when you look at that team, very well coached, very fundamentally sound, very good tackling team, unlike Oklahoma right now. So I think it'll be I think that game will be interesting. They've got to get I'm sounding like a broken record, but got to get much better on defense, and they have got to have a lot more intensity, be ready to play, tackling, and just coverage in the back end as well as um, playing tough up front. John Doe OU is going to look their way to a 15 in the Natty somehow. I mean, I don't think anyone here would be unhappy with that if that happened. And I think Oklahoma's got a long way to go before they're even close to competing with an Alabama or Georgia. No matter what, no matter what if they're playing at 6:30 a.m. on the moon. Alabama or Georgia is not struggling to even to a small extent with Kansas. So that's the difference in those three programs right now, without a doubt. No Williams, no Williams as Heisman. I don't really. Are you saying he shouldn't be a Heisman contender, or you're saying no, Williams is a Heisman contender? Um, I do think that he can get there. Maybe not necessarily to get in the top two, but I think he could be, within the top five by the end of the year, maybe even three or four. He's got a long way to go to catch up with some of those, but he's got the recency bias. He's got ESPN factor with Herbstreit kind of pubbing him. Talked about it on game day today. He's got a couple of those Heisman moments today that specifically, the takeaway, I guess you call it, of Kennedy Brooks in the first down is going to be something that people are going to talk about. So he'll continue to be a guy that's talked about right there. So, yeah, I do think that he has a chance to get there. At this point, I feel better. D Polo, thanks for the comment. At this point, I feel better. Oklahoma playing against tougher team. You're right. For whatever reason, Oklahoma seems to play down to the level of competition, and I think Oklahoma's not really performed bad in games in which they were either a close favorite or maybe even an underdog. So, yeah, I think. So this is the thing that I say about the coaching. Grinch can't go out there and tackle for him. I guarantee you they practice tackling every single day. They practice tackling of some sort. So it's not like that they don't do this, and Grinch tells them not to tackle or doesn't even emphasize it. I guarantee you, as much of a struggle as they have had defensively, specifically from a tackling perspective, that is something that gets spoken about and talked about over and over and over again, without a doubt. Let's see. Ryan, thanks for telling me your Oklahoma had the mountain fourth quarter comeback against our really worst problem in division football. I agree with you right now. I agree with you, but the fact of the matter is, the top 10 is struggling just in general. When you look at Cincinnati, we talked about that just a little bit ago. Cincinnati struggled today against Navy. Let me pull up the top 25 here. When you look at things nationally, Penn State is in overtime, double overtime with Illinois. Right now, you look at Cincinnati won 27-20 over Navy. I think that's equally as disappointing of a win. Cincinnati desperately needed to be impressive in that win, and just winning that game by 7 points again is very similar to what Oklahoma is going through as well. Michigan came on late. They struggled in that game for a big part of the game. Won that game 33-7, but then we'll see some of these other teams. Like I said, you've got Ole Miss down 7-0 now. Oregon down 7-0. Iowa State and Oklahoma State still scoreless. Like I said, Penn State and Illinois are tied. So yeah, if you want to say Oklahoma doesn't belong anywhere near the playoffs, I don't doubt you in that thought. But my thought is, who else is going to make it? Who else is going to be there? So Jimmy, no pressure, agreed. Tackling seems to be one of the bigger problem. Kansas is bye week, moved the SEC basically just snuck by Vandy. Yep, about the same. So let me clarify a comment here. I think this is a good point, Ryan. I give coaches blame. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean he needs to go. Yes, I think Grinch is to blame. Riley is to blame for these kids not being up and not being ready to go, no matter who they have out there. So that's definitely to blame. But is it something that I think he needs to get fired for? No, but I think it's something that they have to change the culture of this team. Like I said, this team has been in an epidemic over the last 4 or 5 years of just not getting up for these games, not being incredibly important to them. It seems so. He definitely doesn't need to go. I don't think there's any cause for any kind of a firing or any change. Obviously, any change unless he decides to go somewhere else. But um, I think that's one of the things that they need to do. If I was in Riley's situation, it would be a big it would be a big calling card for me in this next year is to get that effort to get that culture change inside the program. Let's see. Look at some of the comments. So again, here's the pushback that I'm going to have with anyone that's talking about his scheme isn't working. His scheme was working fine last year. I didn't see there wasn't any complaints about his scheme last year. The scheme was working well in year one. This isn't about the scheme, guys. Let's be clear with this. This is not about the scheme. He didn't forget how to coach. It's the players have to go play. Now, if you want to, like I said in the last comment, if you want to blame Grinch and the defensive staff overall for the team not being ready, coming out flat, that's understandable. If you want to get on them for, maybe not putting as much pressure on the quarterback as they need to, that's understandable. But to say that the scheme and he's not working, that I don't think that's valid. I don't really. It doesn't fly with me. Let's see. I really need a better time. Yeah, completely agree. This is Jay. This is one of the things that I mean, I harp on this over and over again, but I think this is the thing that I've went over and over again with one of the biggest problems in this program, and I think one of the big intangible keys to the season, which is Oklahoma needs to find a way to get up for all of these games and have a killer instinct, and they don't really right now. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of reality on the way it is right now. So I knew there probably wouldn't be a ton of stuff here today. So I'm actually going to cut our pod today just a little bit short. I've got some family, those that follow me on Twitter. I've got some family stuff going on this afternoon that I got to be there for. But we're going to do whatever we can to try to have an all-day podcast next Saturday. So come join us here. Typically on Boomer Breakdown, but we'll talk about everything college football nationally. Some really great games next weekend. A really good set of games here at the 2:30 slot. So go enjoy some of the great football today, and we will talk to you guys next week. Boomer Sooner.